who did this? So he followed the direction from which Kuvalyapita came, and he found Kamsa. So they introduced themselves to one another, and Jarasandha said, I'd like to make a gift to you because of your prowess. I'd like to give as a gift to you this elephant, Kuvalyapita, and my 2 daughters in marriage. The 2 daughters were named Asti and Prapti, as you see on the screen here. And in this way, there was an alliance by marriage between Kamsa and Jarasandha. So that's how Kuvalyapita got to be in Kamsa's kingdom under his care, and giant Kuvalyapita. Now there's some Sanskrit poetry that describe that when an elephant, during certain seasons, male elephants become very sexually agitated, and from the temples of their forehead comes a liquid that's blackish in color, and it's very fragrant. It's said in poetry that when Krishna killed Kuvalyapita, his body became scented with this nice liquid that was moving down the side of Kuvalyapita's head, the forehead, the temple of his body. So there you see the painting. The elephant trainers are bringing Kuvalyapita to trample Krishna. He went in between the legs of the elephant, grabbed the trunk of the elephant. There you see in the background over on the right side, there's Balaram, of course. And he pulled very hard on the trunk of the elephant, and he went crashing to the ground. Giant elephant. And after he went crashing to the ground, Krishna then broke off the tusks, one of his tusks, and started smashing his body with the tusk. And smashing and smashing and smashing, he eventually killed Kuvalyapita. There we see Balaram with the other tusk, and you see the little bloodied on the end. A lot of nice paintings. And Krishna is victorious. Rather than Kuvalyapita finishing him, he finished Kuvalyapita. And after that happened, in the same chapter, Krishna and Balaram went striding into the wrestling arena. This is the beginning of chapter 44, the next chapter. There we see Chandra and Mushtika. And on the back side, on the left, that's the 3 brothers of Chandra and Mushtika. And sitting up on that throne on the upper right side, that's Kamsa, who was really interested to see how these powerful wrestlers are going to easily defeat 2 12-year-old boys. But lo and behold, Chandra and Mushtika were defeated instead. And you look closely, you can see the beads of perspiration. The 3 brothers calling out, "Be victorious." And the people in the audience, in the wrestling arena, calling out for Krishna to be victorious. Of course, Krishna was victorious. And then the 3 brothers jumped in the wrestling arena, and they were finished also. And then Krishna, very eager to finish Kamsa, grabbed him by the hair, pulled him off his elevated seat, and with one blow of his fist, finished Kamsa. In the background there you see Balaram kind of casually observing. And one smash, and Kamsa was finished. And when Kamsa was finished, people were in disbelief. Maybe he just got knocked out, maybe he's not dead. So Krishna dragged him all around the wrestling arena so people could know that wicked Kamsa is dead. And after that was done, Krishna went to rescue his mother and father, Vasudeva and Devaki, from the prison house of Kamsa. And they were again reunited after 12 years of separation, because remember, Devaki never even saw Balaram, and they only saw Krishna for one evening before he was transferred to Gokul. Ugrasena was then placed on the throne, and this chapter 44, so from chapter 44 through chapter 50, so 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. Krishna went to school. Sandipani Muni, that whole chapter is told. Krishna rescued the son of Sandipani Muni from the abode of Yamaraj and brought him back to Sandipani Muni. And then after 2 months of being in school, Krishna graduated. Graduation time, right? Krishna graduated and went back. Prior to going, he had received his Gayatri Diksha from Gargamuni, and then several other things. He had made a promise that he would visit Kubja. He made a promise that he would visit Akrura, so there's those exchanges. He sends Akrura to go to Hastinapur because he's got the news that there's some mischief going on in Hastinapur. So while they're in Mathura, that's when Akrura goes and pays a visit, spends a month to do some intelligence gathering to see what's going on. Chapter 47, Krishna sends Uddhava to Vrindavan. Chapter 48 is Radharani's talks with the bumblebee. And then comes chapter 50. In the beginning of chapter 50, the title is Krishna establishes the city of Dwarka, but that's before 51, where he delivers Muchakunda. It gives this description of Jarasandha, how he became Jarasandha, and even got the name. And the history goes, this is Jarasandha's father, Brihadrath, king of Magadha. Same, Jarasandha later became king of Magadha. He had no son, although he had 2 queens. And his 2 queens were daughters of the king of Kashi. So he went to the forest to engage in austerities, hoping that by some austerities and some blessings from great souls, he would be able to have a son. And while doing austerities in the forest, he came across Chandra Kaushika Rishi, and he requested the Rishi for a benediction that he could have a son. So the Rishi gave him a mango, telling him that his co-wives, by taking the mango, they would bear a child. So he was very happy, and he took the mango back to his capital in Magadha, and he gave the mango to his 2 queens. They cut the mango in 2. Soon they conceived, and sure enough, half a child was born to each one. And when they showed the half a child born of each one to the king was just very disturbed, and he decided this is not normal. So he took the 2 halves and placed them in the forest. This illustration doesn't show forest, but a she-demon, Jara, found the 2 halves and thought, this is great, a nice meal. And she just out of curiosity put the two halves together, and the two halves formed one whole child. So she understood that this had happened because she's a demon. She understood the source of the child was the king. So she took the now one child to Brihadrat and said, this is your child, please take. And he was very grateful. And he said, is there something I can do for you? And she said, sure, just name the child after me. And so he did. And that's how he got the name Jara Sanda. Jara Sanda. And after some time, when Asti and Prapti, the two daughters of Jarasandha, who had been married to Kamsa, found that their husband had been killed, they went back to Daddy. And they asked Daddy to take revenge. So Jarasandha takes a vow of revenge that he would not only kill Krishna, but he would destroy the entire Yadu kingdom and all of its members. So he gathered together 13 Akshohini divisions of soldiers. What's an Akshohini division? It's given in the Bhagavatam. There's this large number, 21,000 plus chariots, 21,000 plus elephants, 109 plus infantry, 65,000 cavalry, that means soldiers on horses, and off he went, 13 of those, heading for Hastinapur. And when he reached Hastinapur, Krishna saw him coming, and he just said, Balaram, I'll take care of this myself. And he went out on his chariot, and Krishna finished the entire army himself, except for one person, Jarasandha. He left him standing alone on the battlefield and said, you can go home now. So Jarasandha was, once having been honored, dishonor is worse than death, right? That saying is there. So he felt terrible. On his way back to Magadha, he decided he would give up his life. But when he reached Magadha, his ministers convinced him otherwise. His ministers convinced him that this was just one of those things, don't worry about it. You weren't prepared, and just kind of a fluke, and don't give up. Get together another army and go attack Mathura again. Not Hastinapur, Mathura. Go attack Mathura again. So he took courage and gathered another so many Akshohini divisions. And this happened 17 times. And Krishna really liked it, because Krishna had appeared in this world for the reason, one of the reasons, of annihilating the miscreants. Pritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chatuspritam. That was a really good arrangement. He didn't have to go anywhere. Jarasandha would bring all the demons, and he could just kill them and carry on with his business in Mathura. Now, I spent some time researching, and I didn't get a conclusive answer, but it seems that Krishna remained in Mathura for 25 years. And it's not clearly indicated like that, because it's very clear from our acharyas how long Krishna remained in Vrindavan. 11 years, 8 months. Almost 12. Almost 12. It was 12 when he got his Diksha. Anyway, 25 years. So during those 25 years, there's 17 times, and it's going to happen again in the 18th time. He comes again with even more Akshohini divisions than the first 13. So Krishna defeated them every time. Every time. On the 18th time, so Magadha is east of Mathura. But north of Mathura is where the Yavana kingdom is. And there's a little history about Kala Yavana. Kala Yavana was born again of a king who had no sons. The history goes like this, but just take a look at the picture first. There's Kala Yavana on the right, of course, and there's Krishna, who is starting to run, and he had 3 million Yavana soldiers. It says in the caption, he was sent by Narada, not exactly sent by Narada. Here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quoting from Vishnu Purana. Once Gargya, son of Gargamuni, was ridiculed by his brother-in-law as a eunuch. And when the Yadavas heard this, they laughed heartily. Infuriated by their laughter, Gargya set out for the south, thinking, "May I have a son who will bring terror to the Yadavas." He worshipped Lord Shiva, eating powdered iron for 12 years. Yummy. And finally, Lord Shiva came, offered a benediction. The benediction was what we just read. He wanted a son who will bring terror to the Yadavas. He was elated and he went back home. That's Gargya, went back home. Back home means in Mathura. Some time passed, and there was a childless king of the Yavanas, and he heard of the exalted nature of Gargya. He invited him to visit. Gargya was requested to father a son with his wife, or queen. And that's how Kalyavana was born. Gargya was the father. The mother was the queen of the Yavana king. That would go on sometimes. Kalyavana possessed the fury of Lord Shiva in his aspect of Mahakala, time of devastation. His chest was as hard as the tips of a thunderbolt. Once Kalyavana asked Narada, who was visiting in his kingdom, "Who are now the strongest kings on earth?" The answer was the Yadus. And so Kalyavana went with 3 million soldiers, with a lot of soldiers, to Mathura, heading from the north. So this narration is from Vishnu Purana, and very same narration is found in Garga Samhita. And here's what Sanatana Goswami writes in Brihad Bhagavatam. Because Gargya and others were inimical to the Yadavas and Pandavas, were all staunch Vaishnavas, Lord Shiva rewarded their worship with imperfect boons. According to the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, Gargya Balaki was a learned son of the sage Garga, who was too proud of his acquired knowledge. By Lord Shiva's blessing, Gargya obtained a son, but not one who could destroy the Yadu dynasty as Gargya had wanted, only one who could frighten and frustrate the Yadus. You have all the history? Is it clear so far? the names of places. That's Puranic stories. Kalyavana is coming from the north with 3 million soldiers. Jarasandha is coming from the east, here shortly, with 18 Akshohini divisions of soldiers through over the period of those 18 visits, or 25 years. And when they started coming from both directions, what did Krishna do? Krishna spoke to Balaram. Krishna said, members of the Yadu dynasty could be harmed. I don't want them to be at risk for safety. You hold off the armies. I'll go to settle the entire Yadu dynasty clan in Dwarka. So he had Dwarka built in a jiffy. He personally transported everybody. He personally settled them in their new accommodations in Dwarka. And when all of that was done, he came back. And when he came back, Kalyavana was very eager for fighting Krishna. He hadn't seen Krishna, but he heard of Krishna's reputation. And when Krishna came onto the battlefield, he immediately recognized that must be Krishna. So what he started to do was hurl insult at Krishna. And what did Krishna do? He ran from the battlefield. And soldiers don't run from the battlefield. It's better to die in the battlefield. But Krishna ran from the battlefield, so he has a special name. You know Krishna's special name for running from the battlefield? Starts with an R. Ranchor. Heard the name? Ranchor. 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 Krishna's name for running from the battlefield. But dishonorable. But he's honored because it's a nice pastime. So he ran and ran and ran. And as he ran, Kalyavana was insulting him this way and that way. Stop. You're a coward. Stop and fight. And Krishna turned back over his shoulder and smiled and just ran faster. Kalyavana tried to run a little faster, and they ran some long distance. The purpose of Krishna's running from the battlefield was to bring him to a cave where Muchukunda was. And when he entered the cave where Muchukunda was, Kalyavana found a body, because the cave was dark. He saw a body lying on the ground, and he thought, no, he's tired. He went over and kicked him. But it wasn't Kalyavana. Excuse me, it wasn't Krishna. It was Muchukunda. Because Muchukunda had a benediction from the demigods after fighting and fighting and fighting for a long time, holding off the demons. They were so indebted, they asked him what benediction you'd like. I'd like to rest without being disturbed. And then for assurance that he wouldn't be disturbed, thinking Indra might come and ask him again, he said, anyone who disturbs my sleep, immediately their body will burn to ashes. Twofold. Long sleep, their body would be burned into ashes if they disturb my sleep. So Kalyavana came and kicked Muchukunda, and instantly, as you see from the painting, fire came from his eyes, body immediately burst into flames, and in short order he was a pile of ashes. So here's a little description we mentioned already. Muchukunda was born in the Ikshvaku dynasty, which is the Sun dynasty, as was Lord Ramachandra in the line of Ikshvaku. He was the son of Mandata. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes about him. Muchukunda was extremely old, having taken birth at the very beginning of this Manvantar, the particular manu. When people see him, they will say, aha, who is this very tall and stout man? Because stature of people during Satya Yuga was much bigger, then reduced, and then reduced, and then reduced. Here's a little description, a little further description of his traits. He was devoted to supporting brahmanas as was needed by the brahmanas. He was dedicated to serving them. He was true to his vow. He made a vow to help the demigods, for example, and he just stayed day and night. He stayed with it. He was known for being true to his vow. He had a kingdom on earth. He left his kingdom and all of his other desires just at the request of the demigods. Very selfless. Long, long time. He was very wise. Dhimate. These are descriptions given by our acharyas. He was humble and undeviatingly determined. And of course he had this benediction from Gargamuni that he would directly see the personality of Godhead, and he had that opportunity. Now, how does determination come? I mean, could be determined. In material things, determination comes from the competitive spirit and false ego. And in spiritual life, determination comes from the same place the seed of bhakti comes. It comes from association of qualified Vaishnavas. That's where it comes from. Here's another painting, Muchukunda, by his glance, cindered Kalyavana. And there he is standing in the cave, and he sees this effulgent personality with him in the cave. Now the burning into ashes has already taken place, so when he sees Krishna, he wants to know who Krishna is. Who are you? Are you this? Are you that? Or the other thing? The painting depicts Vishakunda very tall because he's from a previous yuga. And Krishna short because he's from Dwarf yuga compared to Satya Yuga people. So he wanted to know who was standing before him. Now I'm going to read from Canto 10, Chapter 51, starting with verse 36. This is how Krishna introduces himself. 10:51:36. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear friend, I have taken thousands of births, lived thousands of lives, and accepted thousands of names. In fact, my births, activities, and names are limitless, and thus even I cannot count them. After many lifetimes, someone might count the dust particles on the earth, but no one can ever finish counting my qualities, activities, names, and births. O great king, the greatest sages enumerate my births and activities which take place throughout the three phases of time, but never do they reach the end of them. Nonetheless, O friend," twice he's calling him friend. That tells us something about the rasa between us, right? "I will tell you about my current birth, name, and activities. Kindly hear. Some time ago, Lord Brahma requested me to protect religious principles and destroy the demons who were burdening the earth. Thus I descended in the Adu dynasty, in the home of Anakunduvi, which is the name of Vasudeva. His name Anukundundubi indicates that when he was born, there was a big celebration because he was known to be perfectly truthful. From the moment he was born, big bugles and other instruments sounding very loudly, that resulted in his name. Somehow his name indicates this. Indeed, because I am the son of Vasudeva, people call me Vasudeva. So he's given 3 names. I have killed Kalanemi, reborn as Kamsa, as well as Pralamba and other enemies of the pious. And now, O king, this barbarian has been burnt to ashes by your piercing glance. Now Krishna could easily have finished him, but he wanted to deliver Muchukunda. He wanted to give Muchukunda the claim and credit, like he wanted Arjuna to take the credit for what he did. Since in the past you repeatedly prayed to me, I have personally come to this cave to show you mercy, for I am affectionately inclined to my devotees. One more verse. Now, choose some benediction from me, O saintly king. I will fulfill all your desires. One who has satisfied me need never again lament. Now he desired to see Krishna. If we were to ask, if anybody here would like to see Krishna, we're all going to say yes. And where does the idea to wanting to see Krishna come from? It comes from qualified Vaishnavas. He got the seed of that desire from Garga Muni. So after hearing, now I am seeing that Lord who I have been aspiring to have the darshan of for so many years. He then offers prayers to Krishna. And if you were Muchukunda, what would you anticipate? Well, you're not Muchukunda. What is Muchukunda's prayers going to consist of? And it largely starts with humility. Muchukunda bowed down to the Lord when he heard this, remembering the words of the sage Garga. He joyfully recognized Krishna to be the Supreme Lord Narayana. The king then addressed him as follows. Shri Muchukunda Uvacha. O Lord, the people of this world, both men and women, are bewildered by your illusory energy. Unaware of their real benefit, they do not worship you, but instead seek happiness by entangling themselves in family affairs, which are actually sources of misery. That person has an impure mind who, despite having somehow or other automatically obtained the rare and highly evolved human form of life, does not worship your lotus feet. Like an animal that has fallen into a blind well, such a person has fallen into the darkness of a material home. I have wasted all this time, O unconquerable one, becoming more and more intoxicated by my domain and opulence as an earthly king, misidentifying the mortal body as the self, becoming attached to children, wives, treasury, and land. I suffered endless anxiety. With deep arrogance, I took myself to be the body, which is a material object like a pot or a wall, thinking myself a god among men. I traveled the earth, surrounded by my charioteers, elephants, cavalry, foot soldiers, and generals, disregarding you in my deluding pride. It goes on. A man obsessed with thoughts of what he thinks needs to be done, intensely greedy and delighting in sense enjoyment, is suddenly confronted by you, who are ever alert. Like a hungry snake licking its fangs before a mouse, you appear before him as dead. The body that at first rides high and fierce elephants and chariots adorned with gold is known by the name King, and later by your invincible tower of time called feces, worms, and ashes. Having conquered the entire circle of directions and being thus free of conflict, a man sits on a splendid throne, receiving praise from leaders who were once his equals. But when he enters the women's chambers, where sex pleasure is found, he is led about like a pet animal, O Lord. A king who desires even greater power than he already has, strictly performs his duties, carefully practicing austerity and foregoing sense enjoyment, but he whose urges are so rampant, thinking, I am independent and supreme, cannot attain happiness. When the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, O Achyuta, he may attain the association of your devotees. Now, we're going to touch on this verse next, because it's a literary ornament when the sequence of things are reversed. So which happens first? The association of devotees, and then freedom from material attraction, or freedom from material attraction and then association of devotees? Association of devotees comes first. We'll see. I'm going to read the verse. I'll show you the verse again. Here's the verse again. Here's the Sanskrit. Now read it again. When the material life of a wandering soul has ceased, O Achyuta, he may attain the association of your devotees. This is text 84. And when he associates with them, there awakens in him devotion unto you, who are the goal of the devotees and the Lord of all causes and their effects. So the explanation is, this is a particular literary ornament in composition when purposely the chronological sequence is reversed. It's to emphasize something into an extreme degree. It's the association of Lord's devotees that enables one to transcend material existence, not the other way around. So that particular literary ornament is called Atisha Yokti. Atisha Yokti. Apparent inversion of sequence. The merciful association of the Lord's devotees makes possible our determination to become Krishna conscious. We already heard. He was known to be very, very determined in everything that he did, and certainly in his pursuit of this benediction of Bhargamuni. Text 54. My Lord, I think you have shown me mercy, since my attachment to my kingdom has spontaneously ceased. Such freedom is prayed for by saintly rulers of vast empires who desire to enter the forest for a life of solitude. O all-powerful one, I desire no boon other than service to your lotus feet, the boon most eagerly sought by those free of material desire. Remember, after introducing himself, Krishna said, please take a benediction from me, I'll fulfill all your desires. And here's the response. I don't have any desires other than service to your lotus feet. That's a spiritual desire. No material desires. Oh Hari, what enlightened person who worships you, the giver of liberation, would choose a boon that causes his own bondage? I'll fulfill all your desires. I don't have material desires. Therefore, O Lord, having put aside all objects of material desire, which are bound to the modes of passion, ignorance, and goodness, I am approaching you, the Supreme Personality Godhead, for shelter. You are not covered by mundane designations. Rather, you are the Supreme Absolute Truth, full and pure knowledge, transcendental to the material modes. His last prayer. For so long I have been pained by troubles in this world, and have been burning with lamentation. My 6 enemies are never satisfied. What are the 6 enemies? The internal ones. Lust, anger, greed, kam, krodh, moha, mada, matharja. Never satiated. And I can find no peace. Therefore, O giver of shelter, O Supreme Soul, please protect me. O Lord, in the midst of danger, I have by good fortune approached your lotus feet, which are the truth, and which thus make one fearless, free of sorrow. This happens in several places in the Bhagavatam. If Krishna offers someone a benediction, whatever it is they want, and this is a nice response, a very ideal response, because so he's a pure devotee. So let's hear how Krishna responds. And then Krishna departs the cave to go back to the battlefield to deal with Jarasandha. O Emperor, great ruler, before it was friend, your mind is pure and potent. Though I enticed you with benedictions, your mind was not overcome by material desires. Lord Nrsimhadeva also offered the same to Prahlad, pure devotee. Understand that I entice you with benedictions just to prove that you will not be deceived. The intelligence of my unalloyed devotees is never diverted by material blessings. The mind of non-devotees who engage in such practices as pranayama are not fully cleansed of material desires. Thus, O king, material desires are again seen to arise in their minds. His parting words. Wander this earth at will, with your mind fixed on me. May you always possess such unfailing love for me. Because you have followed the principles of a Kshatriya, you killed living beings. While hunting and performing other duties, you must vanquish the sins thus incurred by carefully executing penances while remaining surrendered to me. O king, in your very next life, you will become an excellent Brahmana, the greatest well-wisher of all creatures, and certainly come to me alone. That's the end of the chapter. One of the lessons from this whole section is Krishna may test us with hardship. He also may test us with all benedictions. Krishna even tested Rukmini, right? But it's not like he didn't know how she would respond, but he wanted her to show the intensity of attachment that she has for him, of love. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur indicates that when intelligence is fixed, this is buddhi, yamasayatnika buddhi, when intelligence is fixed, then nothing on this side and nothing on that side can sway. Because when the intelligence is fixed, then the mind stays determined and fixed. The senses stay determined and fixed. So Muchukunda is the story, is teaching of this lesson. Krishna may test us, both on the prosperous side and the hardship side. Your mind was not overcome by material desires. He enticed him with benedictions to prove that you would not be deceived. The intelligence of my unalloyed devotee never diverted by material blessings. We know the story of how Krishna tested Rukmini. And as he was showing Rukmini's intense attachment for him, she fainted on the ground. Now, in this, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur has a nice comment that concludes this section. Muchukunda was thinking when Krishna spoke this way, you can't, you're gonna have to go elsewhere. Alas, alas, Krishna wants to separate me from his association from now on. That can't be, it just can't be. Noticing Muchukunda's great anxiety, Krishna then thought as follows. In this incarnation, he should not associate with me directly. All the personal assistants in my pastimes have taken birth in Dwarpa Yuga, such as Uddhava, Akrura, Arjuna, and Yudhishthira. Muchukunda, however, is extremely old, having taken birth at the very beginning of this Manvantar. When people see him, they will laugh and say, "Aha! Who is this very tall and stout man who is such a poor match for the Lord?" Even now, during the pastime of fleeing from Jarasandha, as well as later, and later pastimes such as the kidnapping of Rukmini, it will not be at all fitting for this person to be in association with me while I'm fighting the likes of Shalva and others. He will take those opponents of mine and crush them in his hands like mosquitoes. What excuse can I make up, therefore, to separate him from my association? This is Vishnu saying Krishna just made up a story. After thinking like this, Krishna decided the only means to accomplish this would be to speak some false words in order to mislead Muchukunda. Thus he spoke this verse. The verse is, you've committed sins by killing animals while hunting in the forest, and you're going to have to atone for those sins. Because these are duties of a Kshatriya. They're not adharmic for a Kshatriya to do these things. And Krishna made it up. And then this final verse. In your very next birth, you'll be the best friend of all of the entities. At that time, you and I will act for their benefit by giving them transcendental knowledge as suits the circumstances. In other words, here's an indication what Muchukunda would do in this next life. He had some service. Before reading this commentary, I knew there must be something like this. He's not going to be with Krishna, then he should go to Krishna after this life. But if he's having him take birth again, there's some service for him. So this is Vishwanath explaining that service. Becoming a universally respected and learned Brahmana, you will attain me alone due to your lack of possessiveness and mood of renunciation. In other words, you will remain in my association. Even in the next life, he wouldn't go back to Godhead, but he would be in association with Krishna anyways. And the end, we're going to cover this, I think, tomorrow. He heads for the North Country. He goes to the Himalayas and engages in austerities for the remaining portion of his life. And then, according to Krishna's indication, he'll become an excellent Brahmana in his next life, do some service for Krishna in that life, and attain the spiritual realm. Who would even know anything about Muchukunda if Krishna hadn't led Kalyavana to the cave and have Muchukunda cinder him and have him offer his nice prayers and test him with his benefit? So Krishna wants to honor his devotee. Taking care of, he took care of Jarasanda's so many Akshohini divisions of soldiers so many times himself personally, without any help. But Kalyava, no problem. He wanted to honor Muchukunda. So here we are, so many years later, honoring Muchukunda. He's a pure devotee. We wouldn't even know about him. Except Krishna wanted to show his satisfaction. So we'll pick up at this point, I think tomorrow, where when Krishna goes back onto the battlefield after the scene with Muchukunda and Kalyavana, Jarasanda's army is still coming. So we'll hear about that tomorrow. Krishna's pastimes are very exciting and educational. Let's see if there's some discussion. Are the people remote able to hear?
Yes, Maharaj. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank
you. You know what to do for tomorrow now, right?
Hopefully I don't know. I'll try.
That was a clever answer. You better practice early before we get started and make sure, and then we'll just be smooth. Okay. Any comments? Over here.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. I have two questions. One is a clarification on there was a slide that said Kalyavana's army was sent by Narada.
Narada, Narada does funny things. Like Narada paid 2 visits to Kamsa and disclosed some secrets to Kamsa. And he also paid a visit to Kalyavana. He's a demon. But it was to facilitate Krishna's pastime. They visited Kalyavana, who wanted to know who is the most powerful kings on the earth today. The others. It's not like he sent him, but he's facilitating Krishna's pastimes. So Kalyavana went to Krishna so Krishna could kill him. Or have Muchukunda kill him. Does that answer your question?
The other question, Maharaj, Muchukunda, he was a pure devotee. He had a desire to see Krishna face to face, and his prayer shows the maturity and humble and a lot of wisdom.
Yes.
But then his behavior of wanting to sleep for a long time.
Wanting to see for a long time.
No, sleep. Sleep.
See.
Sleep.
Sleep for a long time. Oh.
It was kind of a little contradicting, I don't know why
he was tired. He was sacrificing 24/7 for years. He was tired. He was very determined. But he was very tired. He did his, so he was tired. Now, how long did he sleep? Too long, right? Because he's a pure devotee. You don't sleep too long. He was sleeping too long. It's part of the pastime.
Can I ask one more
Yeah,
question?
sure.
When somebody does any austerities or tapasya, the demigods are kind of obligated to give them, if it is within their capacity to offer that benediction. But in this case, Lord Shiva, for the father of to kill the Yadu dynasty.
It wasn't to kill the other dynasty. Read carefully, or listen carefully. Go back and read it. To give difficulty, harass and give difficulty to the others. Now his heart's desire was to kill them. The word that he spoke wasn't to kill them. Harass and give trouble to them. It's something like what Kumbhakarna, when he was asking for a benediction, the demigods requested Brahma trick him because he's so powerful. Don't let him harass us because it will be too much. He's too powerful. So the goddess Saraswati had him speak the words that he spoke, so he got the benediction that he got. And that's what's described by the commentators of Ramayana, so one can assume something similar. You have something.
Hey, Krishna Guru Maharaj, very enlightening evening with nice pastimes,
Yeah.
It was like, we learned a lot of information from today's evening. I'm just like trying to clarify one thing, if I heard it right. You were mentioning about like when Muchakunda was offering prayers, and here Krishna is saying like, do whatever you want, but make sure you're doing the Kshatriya Dharma, and then focusing on me. Did I hear that right, Maharaj?
No. Because in his next life, you mean?
No, like
For the remainder of his life?
for the remaining of life, he said like, I just want to
I'll read it
pray.
again. Wander this earth at will, with your mind fixed on me. May you always possess such unflinching devotion for me. Because you followed the principles of a Kshatriya, you killed living beings while hunting and performing other duties. You must vanquish the sins thus incurred by carefully executing penances while remaining surrendered to me. And the last is his next life. So in this life,
I heard that wrong. So like previously he was talking about the Kshatriya code, and then he said like remaining life, like do penances.
in your
So I got it.
very next life, you will become an excellent Brahmana, the greatest well-wisher of all creatures, and will certainly come to me alone. We saw Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on both of those. This one, because of your sins and this and that, it was a way of having Krishna having Muchakunda not accompany him through the rest of his pastimes. It was a text of separation after meeting. What happens after meeting the Supreme Lord in their separation? The mind goes to intensified feelings after meeting in separation. And then the next life is, why a next life? Why not? Because his mind is absorbed in Supreme. Because there was some service for him in his next life. He wanted his assistance and some service. So, it doesn't say, but Vishwanath in his commentary says, we'll do some service together in our next life. So you'll be with me. But it'll be in this realm, and then you'll come to me. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. This pattern also kind of reminds about like Krishna's interaction, like you said, Nrsimha, but I was also thinking about like interaction with the Kubja, the florist, and all
Yes.
those things.
Yes.
It kind of
yes.
reminds those.
Same. And Mathura. Their talks in Mathura are very much like this. Very much like this. But Krishna, so, the manner of testing doesn't mean that Krishna doesn't know and he wants to find out, is it this or that. Testing means he wants to bring out the best and display to others the best. How wonderful are these devotees? That sense. The same can be with hardship. The test with hardship. The unflinching devotion despite hardship. Yeah, yes, etc. Haridas Thakur, Prahlad Maharaj being tortured. Behind you on the
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Like on the previous verse, like you mentioned, like Muchikanda as a Kshatriya, he did killings. So as his dharma, he did not incur any sin.
Yes.
But the same scenario, Arjuna says like killing all those people will incur so much sin in the battlefield with Krishna.
Yes.
So Krishna says, what the intent of if you kill for sake of Krishna, then you will not incur any sin.
Correct.
So Muchikunda, even though he will incur sin, right? Even though because as a king, he will be having so much egoism and everything, and he will be doing actions not in the Krishna consciousness, but to satisfy his
There you
own.
go. But it's not, there's a difference between bondage from piety and bondage from sin. But he had become a pure devotee. And so there wasn't bondage for either piety or sin. Now, a Kshatriya, my understanding of this, a Kshatriya on religious principles who engages in battle is not incurring sin. A Kshatriya who engages in hunting is not incurring sin. For example, in this nice description, after Indraprastha is built, Krishna stays with the Pandavas for some time. The marriage with Draupadi, and Krishna arranges for Indraprastha to be built. Krishna stays for some time, and he's with Arjuna. Arjuna says, let's go with our bows and hunting. Arjuna and Krishna going hunting in a forest, the Khandava forest. It's part of the responsibility. My understanding is this. I'm not, really well learned in the codes of a Kshatriya, but when Kshatriyas are doing hunting, not for just sport, but for honing their skills for when it does come to a battle where they're required to have skill, they're ready. For that kind of preparation, there's no sin. That's my understanding. If it's just whimsical going hunting, it's another thing. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the pure devotee, so there's no sin. Bhakti burns the reactions of good and bad karma. But Krishna is speaking like that, because he has some idea for some service for him in his next life, and he has some idea of, as Vishnu is saying, well, look, so you're with me, and I'm doing all these other pastimes. So we need to be separated. So he gives some reason to be separated, and some bridge to do some service in his next life together. Next, you have something more.
Yeah. Even though knowing Krishna is cause of all causes, I think anxiety never goes. I think
You're speaking of yourself now or Muchukunda?
about myself.
Okay, say it again now.
Even though Krishna is cause of all causes, even after knowing that Krishna is the cause of all causes,
Yeah.
theoretically, even though I know it, but still the anxiety don't go.
Anxiety's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're not there yet. You're not a pure devotee yet. That anxiety, that negative emotion, is a product of forgetfulness. And in that clouded or shadowy area or dark area of forgetfulness, there's negative emotions like that one. So what do? Go to the light. Go to the light.
Light.
And the darkness is gone. Remembrance of Krishna takes away those emotions. It doesn't take away the circumstance. Like, a number of devotees went to a nice wedding. They came back with COVID. Now, they didn't go to the wedding thinking, hey, let's have a great time so we can catch some COVID and come back and not be able to attend programs. That wasn't the plan. So there's unexpected things that happen in life. And now we're taking precautions because. So, it doesn't take away unexpectedness. When someone becomes a pure devotee, when someone becomes a devotee, unexpected things are still going to happen. Unless you're Narada Muni, then you know what's going to happen before it happens. You treat Kalagya like Vyasa, you know what's going to happen before it happens. But for the rest of us, there's uncertainty in what's going to happen. But we know that there's protection, whatever happens. We're feeling safe, even in that phase of uncertainty. Quite okay. Then it becomes adventure. What's next? Because you feel secure in the protection of Krishna. Anything else? Do you have anything online?
I think we have one question online.
Online, okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this question is from Shama Gopika Didi. Muchukunda was already a devotee surrendered to Krishna. We learn from Bhagavad Gita that when one surrenders to Lord, he will deliver from all the sinful reaction.
Yeah.
Then how can we understand that Muchukunda needs to take another birth to attain Krishna?
Yeah. We covered it, but I'll say it again. It wasn't because of sin, because he was a pure devotee. Although Krishna is speaking like that, it's a cover because Krishna wants him to do some other service in his next life. He wants to do that service together with him in his next life. And so my question that I haven't found an answer to is in Gora Lila, because after Krishna Lila comes Gora Lila. In Gora Lila, who is Muchukunda? but some service with Lord Chaitanya in Gaura-lila. And he has the prerogative. He's a pure devotee. He find being in Lord Chaitanya's association fantastic. Take another word, no problem. Be with Lord Chaitanya, fantastic. But he would be with Lord Chaitanya, be with the personality of Godhead. So he made some arrangement so they could do some service together next month. And be very kind and give liberation to others by his transcendental teachings.
That's so much.
That's it. Okay. See the Prabhupada.
Which I